It was arranged to go in there on the night of March 6th, 1976. Nothing happened to me, but things were happening to people around me.
The way people were affected was just crazy.
First thing that happened, our cameraman, Steve, got to the landing on the second floor, and all of a sudden he bent over, clutching his chest. He had stabbing chest pains.
The overwhelming impression was very sad.
I had the impression of a teenager who had done something that had changed his life entirely, and he had committed something horrendous.
When we went up to the second floor, of course, the psychics could feel the remnants or the bad vibes. 6 people had been murdered violently there, not 2 years before.
There was a window above me, and I saw a face of a young girl looking out at me. Then I heard crying, weeping. So I said, look to the white light, walk towards it, and everybody you love is waiting for you.
Lorraine, during the seance, said that she felt like there was some evil here that was from the bowels of the earth. It was not just the murdered spirits of the dead DeFeos.
I could see bodies all lined up, all with white sheets over them.
I got the impression of like hooded figures like monks right outside the door, closing the door well, looking in at me. I thought, uh-oh.
I get to the top and I go into a room, and Marvin Scott said to me, what is it? What is it? I said to him, I hope this is as close to hell as I'll ever get.
So I took the holy water and I opened it and I said, get thee behind me, Satan. And I went like that, and you could hear like water on a hot stove go, tss, and then everything in the house stopped.
Ed and Lorraine Warren sensed something evil in the house. Mary Downey sensed a teenage girl crying, perhaps trapped in her death dimension. When she entered the house, she too sensed the dark force that lingered. Probably one of the first purported ghost hunters of his time, Hans Holzer also investigated the Amityville horror case. In January 1977, Holzer and spiritual medium Ethel Myers entered 112 Ocean Avenue in Amityville. Myers was a trance medium, actually allowing her spirit guide to speak through her, claimed that the house had been built over an ancient Native American burial ground, and that the spirit of an angry Shinnecock Indian chief, Rolling Thunder, had possessed the previous occupant, Ronald DeFeo Jr., driving him to murder his family. Photographs taken at the scene revealed curious anomalies, such as the halos which appeared in the supposed images of bullet marks made in the original murders. Holzer's claim that the house was built on an Indian sacred land was, however, substantiated by the local Amityville Historical Society, he claimed. This claim was subsequently denied by the local Amityville Historical Society after this horror legend had grown seemingly out of proportion. And it was pointed out that it was the Montaukett Indians and not the Shinnecocks who had been the original settlers in the area, especially in the area now known as Amityville. Now, before we stretch out further, I'd like to point out one more reference to the Indian spiritual ground theory. Later in 1977, another group investigated the house. Another well-known and verified psychic medium, Alex Tanis, entered the home, and I'll read a transcript. In a section from the book Gallery Magazine, December 1977, written by Donald Newlove, quoting Mr. Tanis' psychic feelings at the time he explored the house. When Tanis, Dr. Carlos Oasis, and I went into the house, we had been told nothing about the murders, only that the house was haunted. We were all kept in ignorance, even Oasis, so that Tanis' psychic powers we were testing would not read our minds about the mass murder or anything about the house. Without help, Tanis located the rooms where the murders had taken place. He had not even known that there were any murders in the house. He found columns of cold air and had flashes about the land that the house was built on as being unhallowed Indian burial ground. He went into a trance and saw some white settlers, Dutch, attacking and killing some Indians on the site while they were having a wedding. A dying Indian doctor or Indian chief cursed this ground of slaughter. This house, Tanis explained, was not so much haunted as cursed or on cursed ground. The Indians did not want the whites to enjoy their stolen land. We also had been told that Indians dying from yellow fever were taken, tied to trees, and left to die in that area. So collectively, we have two psychic sources claiming Indian spiritual, perhaps Indian cursed activity on or around the premises of the area. However, Indian burial sites have been found all over Long Island, including Amityville, so no one has been able to confirm or deny the burial of an Indian chief on or near the 112 Ocean Avenue property. This article, written November 2nd, 2005, from the Associated Press, states, Riverhead, New York. James Richardson was checking out erosion damage on eastern Long Island after days of torrential rain last month when he made a fascinating discovery. I saw little bits of bone down the hillside, and some of it had washed away in the surf already, said Richardson, the park supervisor at Indian Island County Park, named in honor of the local Shinnecock and other tribes that have inhabited Long Island for as much as 12,000 years. A closer inspection uncovered skull and bone fragments, as well as several artifacts, including a ceramic bowl and pipe covered with ornate geometrical markings. The artifacts date at least 500 years and possibly as far back as 700 BC, according to one expert who says such finds are becoming more common. Park officials said there have been considerable erosion in the area in the past several decades. Concrete barriers that were once part of the parkland are now underwater, 24 or more yards from shore. So areas that were high and dry even a few centuries ago, a lot of these settlements are now under 10 feet of water, said Bernstein, who said he receives a call about once a year from someone telling him they have found an ancient artifact while walking along the beach. The bones have since been collected by the Suffolk County Medical Examiner Office for scientific study, and the artifacts are being held by the County Parks Department until it can be determined what to do with them, said Parks Commissioner Ronald Foley. The area is now surrounded by a snow fence and is patrolled regularly by Parks Police to prevent treasure hunters or curious onlookers from damaging what is considered now hallowed ground. Now, this claim that there was no evidence of the property being a supposed may be incorrect. Both Hans Holzer and George Lutz claimed that the Amityville Historical Society did indeed have evidence of some sort of that this claim was true. Holzer himself claimed that he talked to a representative of the society that showed him evidence to the contrary. Lutz also claimed the same thing. Now, no paperwork can be found, and the society sticks by the falsehood that there was supposed evidence. The Great Indian Massacre happened in 1644, and it was the largest killing of Indians on Long Island at that time, or any time. It is now called East Massapequa, and Long Island was divided between the Dutch and the English settlers that had come into the area. Unlike the English, the Dutch did not get along well with the Indians, and Amityville was located right on the border between the Dutch and English territory. The Dutch did not have enough troops, so they hired an Englishman called John Underhill to help them. John Underhill was a very good Indian fighter, and in 1644 he brought the fight to the Indians. He killed 120 Indians in the only major Indian battle on Long Island. For this, Underhill was paid 25,000 guilders by Governor William Kieft. Below is a quote about how there was a local legend about the ground being red with blood. In the 19th century, local historian Samuel Jones wrote, "After the Battle of Fort Neck, the weather being very cold and the wind northwest, Captain Underhill and his men collected the bodies of the Indians and threw them in a heap on the brow of the hill, and then sat down on the leeward side of the heap to eat their breakfast. When this part of the county came to be settled, the highway across the neck passed directly over the spot where, it was said, the heap of Indians lay, and the earth in that spot was remarkably different from the ground about it, being strongly tinged with the reddish cast, which the old people said was occasioned by the blood of the dead Indians. The location of the killing was in Fort Neck, about 1.5 miles from the famous Amityville house at the corner of Merrick Road and Cedar Shore Road. In 1935, the bones of 24 people were dug up at the site. Were the Indians actually angry with the white settlers? And what if Hans Holzer was on the right track after all? What would you think? I mean, if people would have the ability to curse a land, to be so angry from what happened to them, the death, devastation, people coming in and invading, you think perhaps what the curse is could be true? Would you be angry? Would you feel like cursing the ground that they walked on? At around 1900, there was an effort to round up all the loose or lost cemetery grounds in and around Amityville. There were no records of a cemetery on the small acreage of where the Amityville house is located. But the legends are there, and they say that legends are born on some spark of the truth. It is true that the Dutch, the English, and the Indians all fought right there in that whole immediate area. And murder is murder, and death is death. Murder is murder, and death is death. As a culture, it is widely known that the Native American Indian is a very spiritual culture, closer to the earth, and maybe it can be said more of a spiritual culture than most of us today. Perhaps what some of these legends say are based on the truth. Indians were indeed slaughtered. They were murdered and left to bleed on the very ground that they considered sacred and gave them life every single day. And I'm no expert on anything, but out of the endless hours of research I've done, some say that, as an Indian culture considered right there where they lived to be a very sacred place, and perhaps an evil place where spirits lay in the forest and it preyed upon the other Indians that were there. And perhaps there is something especially mysterious right there in that little neck where those row of houses all lay, right next to these little inlet creeks that come up on the south end of Long Island. That energy that was disturbed by the slaughters and by the killings that did happen. Maybe it's only released to those that are open to it. Maybe it's an energy that lives and waits for those that are right to feel its force or feel its power.